Hello and welcome. Despite the fact that they haven't sold very many cars outside of China quite yet, NIO is one of the biggest names in the global EV game. That's why I, and I'm sure many of you, were very excited for this particular review. This is the all-new NIO ES7, known as the EL7 in the European market, where deliveries are set to begin in 2023. Let's see what European customers have in store for them.
With hands-on test drives and reviews of exciting Chinese market vehicles, Wheelsboy is the #1 source for China auto insights. Be sure to check us out on Instagram and Facebook. The positioning of the ES7 is a bit confusing. Many call it a replacement for the aging ES6, but it is both larger and considerably more expensive, at least in its base trim. It's also smaller and cheaper than the Neo ES8, and only comes with 5 seats. Perhaps there will be a restructuring that sees the debut of a smaller ES6 replacement, or maybe that space will be filled by more affordable versions of the ES7.
But that's a problem for NIO to figure out. We're just here to review the car, starting with the exterior styling. This thing is the definition of an evolution rather than a revolution in that department. It looks nearly identical to the previous generation of NIO SUVs, especially here on the front end and when it comes to the profile of the car. Still, the small changes they did make were able to result in a lower drag coefficient of 0.263 versus the 0.28 of the NIO ES6. This thing rides on NIO's new NT 2.0 electronic and electrical architecture, but the basic physical platform is still the same one as previous generation NIO SUVs. The biggest giveaway? The placement of the charging port here on the front of the car. You see, here in China, most drivers prefer to back into a parking space rather than pull in front first. That includes when they're charging, so the placement up here is a bit inconvenient, and it's something that NIO owners have complained about. The biggest difference in terms of looks can certainly be found on the rear end, where NIO's Spark Beat taillights have been replaced by a single LED strip, very similar to that of the NIO ET7 sedan, but with an extra little kink right here. If we open up the rear cargo space is officially 570 liters, which is actually 14 liters less than that of the ES6. NIO seems to be pursuing the outdoorsy set with the ES7 because they are now offering an optional electronically deployable tow bar. That is a $1,050 US option, and when so equipped, the ES7 can pull around 2,000 kilograms or 4,400 pounds.
Towing is certainly going to drop your range quite a bit, but camping with an EV can make sense, as once you get to your campsite, vehicle-to-load capability means you basically have a giant battery pack that can power all sorts of equipment.
The interior of the ES7 is essentially a copy and paste of the ET7 sedan, which means you get the same 10.2-inch instrument cluster, 12.8-inch OLED center screen, and standard heated, cooled, and massaging seats. Also standard is the 23-speaker sound system with Dolby Atmos surround sound.
Not so standard is the delightfully soft and comfy Nappa leather interior trim, which costs an extra $3,000 US. Oh, and throw in another $600 so you can have Nomi on your dashboard.
Worth every penny. NIO has once again made use of Karoon, an environmentally friendly alternative to plastic that's made of rattan. I made my feelings about this material quite clear in our review of the ET7. Basically, I think it looks kind of cheap for a luxury car. However, I must point out that it looks so much better in this black color than it did in that, off-white of the ET7 we had. I mentioned before that this car is slightly larger than the ES6. 6.2 centimeters longer, to be specific, and 6 centimeters of that is in the wheelbase. Considering the fact that the rear cargo area is actually smaller than the ES6, I'm guessing all that space went to the passengers, particularly here in the second row.
I would argue the backseat is actually more comfortable than that of the ET7 sedan, which has cooled and massaging seats and more space, but has a higher floor and lacks the adjustable rake of the ES7.
In terms of rear features, you have the same small LED screen that's available in the ET7, which allows you to control your air conditioning, media functions, and of course those heated seats that I mentioned before. Down below, we have a small USB, a Type-C charging port. Same kind of shoddy material quality found in the ET7 down here. That's not great. And then up here, we have a fold-down center armrest with a second Type-C charging port.
Powering the ES7 is a pair of electric motors making 480 kilowatts and 850 newton meters of torque. That can be paired with a 75 kilowatt-hour battery for a CLTC range of 485 kilometers, or you can go for the 100 kilowatt-hour battery pack and get 620 kilometers.
An ES7 with the 75 kilowatt-hour battery pack will cost you around $64,000 here in China. If you want to upgrade to the 100 kilowatt-hour version, that's going to cost you around $72,000.
Want to save money up front? Customers who lease their battery pack will pay $54,000 for their ES7, with a monthly battery rental fee of about $140 for the 75 kilowatt-hour battery and $235 for the 100 kilowatt-hour battery.
The ES7 is also one of the promised platforms for NIO's 150 kilowatt-hour solid-state battery. That thing is supposed to deliver 930 kilometers of CLTC range when they finally put it in the EC7. Customer deliveries were supposed to begin in Q4 of this year, but the company has already admitted that that was going to be delayed. Let's hope that we can see it in Q1 of 2023.
Despite the fact that the ES7 drives on essentially the same platform used by the ES6 and ES8, the liberal use of components from the ET7 sedan, including the entire powertrain, mean it drives more like a lifted version of that car. That includes the acceleration, which is rather violent for a vehicle this large. 100 kilometers per hour arrives in a claimed 3.9 seconds, and it feels very nearly as fast as the ET7.
That doesn't mean they drive identically, of course. The steering in the ES7 is noticeably heavier than that of the ET7, and I would say that the difference in its driving modes are, well, they're a little bit toned down. The Sport Plus driving mode in the ET7 is pretty hard, and the Comfort mode is very, very soft. I would say the difference between the driving modes in the ES7, on the other hand, well, they're not quite so drastic. Overall, I would say the driving experience is a comprehensive upgrade over NIO's first generation of SUVs. They tended to be too soft for their own good, whereas the air suspension on the ES7, it manages to have a pillowy ride, but also pretty good body control for such a large SUV. Overall, it feels more solid and therefore more luxurious in my opinion.
The ES7 has NIO's Watchtower sensor pack mounted above the windshield, which includes a LiDAR unit that plays an important role in NIO's suite of driver assistance systems, including highway navigation on autopilot.
Despite its slightly confusing positioning within the NIO family, the ES7 is certainly an upgrade over the previous generation of NIO SUVs, not just in terms of interior styling and material quality, but also in terms of the sheer driving experience. To put it another way, what do European customers have to look forward to? Well, a very good premium EV SUV.